In this video, we'll be looking at some of the most helpful named NPCs in WoW. And to better explain what this means, let's go into the number 10 spot. At number 10, we have a duo of dutiful drivers. Franklin Martin and Koak Hoburn drive the Chauffeur Chopper mounts, for Alliance players and Horde players respectively. The Chauffeur Chopper is one of the most unique mounts in the game, but before we talk about how cool this mount is, we need to discuss the two NPCs that drive these machines. Franklin Martin is a male human who closely resembles the character of Frank Martin from the action film franchise named The Transporter. The first movie, released in 2002, follows the mercenary for hire and expert driver Frank Martin, who has 3 rigid rules when transporting who knows what. Number 1, never change the deal. Number 2, no names. And number 3, never open the package. In WoW, Martin is significantly less cool, but will nevertheless drive the chauffeured mechanist chopper to wherever the player desires. Koak Hoburn is a Horde equivalent for Frank Martin and drives the chauffeured mecha hog. He is a stylish male orc who appears with a rather stunning top hat. The name Koak Hoburn is a reference to Hoke Colburn, the chauffeur portrayed by the actor Morgan Freeman in the 1989 film Driving Miss Daisy. What makes the chauffeur chopper so helpful is that any player can ride in it, no matter their skill level. As you can imagine, this is very nifty and has several benefits, with there being 3 main ones. First, the player no longer has to wait to unlock riding by leveling. Second, the player doesn't have to buy the training skill, and saves a bit of gold. Third, since the player is not driving and is in the sidecar, the driver NPC is significantly less likely to be stunned or slowed. The mount was added in the World of the Draenor expansion and is obtained after the player earns the achievement Heirloom Hoarder. To get this achievement, a player must earn 35 different heirlooms in their account. Most heirlooms can be bought from major cities, and once the players earn the achievement, they'll get a letter from Oglethorpe of Noctigus congratulating them, and along with the letter comes an item called Clinking Present. Opening up this present then awards the player with the Chauffeur Chopper item, which a player can use to learn the mount. After the Shadowlands level squish, this mount became significantly less useful, mainly because the ability to learn the riding skills reduced from level 20 to level 10, and most allied races start level 10 anyway. Additionally, mount equipment was added to the game in patch 8.2, and the comfortable rider's barding that is a craftable item with leatherworking skill prevents the player from being dazed while riding. This eliminated one of the key uses of the Chauffeur Chopper as a way to avoid most dazes from mobs. Because of these changes, Franklin Martin and Koak Hoburn have been placed at number 10 on this list. But from Worlds of Draenor to BFA, they would definitely have been much higher on the list. And at number 9, we have another duo of NPCs. Both Tossup and Lindormi are NPCs that players can trade in Mythic Plus keystones that let players obtain new keys every week. Tossup was the keystone trader for the Shadowlands expansion. This broker could be found next to the Great Vault in Oribos. Tossup was removed at the beginning of Dragonflight, but another NPC replaced their purpose in Valdrakken, named Lindormi. Lindormi is a bronze dragon with the visage of a female Pandaren. She can be found in the Valdrakken down the main steps from the Seat of the Aspects, and next to the bank. Here she appears standing in front of a stone tablet and portals to the various stones past time-walking dungeons that are part of the current Mythic Plus season of Dragonflight. What makes both these vendors so helpful to players are their abilities to trade in Mythic Plus keystones. If you're not familiar with the Mythic Plus system, in order to convert a dungeon from Mythic Dungeon to a Mythic Plus dungeon, a player must insert a keystone into the Font of Power. Prior to the Shadowlands expansion and the addition of Tossup, players could only acquire keystones either through completing a Mythic Plus dungeon, or receiving one from their weekly chests. These keys could not be changed in any way, meaning whatever key you got was the one you were stuck with. However, with the addition of Keystone Traders, players can now choose to re-roll a key you've completed in the past, and the level of the keystone remains unchanged. Lindormi can also provide you with a weekly keystone for the player, in case the player did not get to loot the Great Vault. And number 8 in this list, we have yet another pair of NPCs. Both Captain Gerrick and Warlord Breka Grimaxe were added in the new starting areas of the Shadowlands expansion called Exile's Reach. Both of these characters are central to the plot of the starting zone as adventurers level from 1 to 10. For Alliance players, they start off following Captain Gerrick as she tries to rescue her fellow shipmates, while Horde players follow Warlord Breka Grimaxe as she does the same. These NPCs are very important and helpful for many reasons, but 2 in particular stand out. First, they help ease new players into the game. Second, Gerrick and Grimaxe teach new players valuable lessons about combat and class mechanics, and how a lot of the game functions in general. While not necessarily helpful for veteran players, these 2 NPCs are amongst the most helpful to new players in the game, and they definitely deserve a spot on this list. Both Captain Gerrick and Grimaxe and their children make another appearance in the Dragon Isles in the Warcraft base camp, where they seem to get along remarkably well. It is interesting that these 2 NPCs never interact on Exile's Reach, even though 2 different groups of Alliance and Horde adventurers get stranded there. Regardless, the appearance of these 2 NPCs in Dragonflight indicates that we may see more of these 2 in the future of the game, and no doubt they will be helpful once again. Next on our list at number 7 is another duo of NPCs named Merchant Damaku and Collector Unta. These 2 NPCs can be found atop the mighty Caravan Brutosaur mount. This mount was added in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. During BFA, for the mere sum of 5 million gold, you too could buy this mount from either Taluta in the Desara Lord docks, or Tricky Nick in Borealis. In patch 8.3, a new feat of strength achievement was added for players who bought the Longboy. The name of this achievement is Conspicuous Consumption. Longboy was removed at the launch of Shadowlands, and this move was not popular with most of the player base at all. The mount can still sometimes appear in the Black Market Auction House, but it's nowhere near as easy as it was during BFA. The 2 NPCs on the Brutosaur are 2 Tortolans. Merchant Damaku is a repair vendor who also sells profession items, and Collector Unta is an auctioneer. This makes this mount the only mount in the game to have an auctioneer on it, and additionally, pretty much allows the player access to the auction house as long as they can mount up. Also, this mount is so far the tallest and largest mount in the game, making it not the most ideal mount for navigating the open world. While the Brutosaur is impressive, the fact is many players don't need constant access to the auction house. Since really only a selected group of players get such use out of the helpful Unta, this Tortolan and her merchant friend Maku only make the 7th spot on this list. And at number 6 on this list, we have yet another duo of NPCs atop a mount. This time it's Cousin Slowhands and Mystic Birdhat riding the Grand Expedition Yak. Added in the Mr. Pandaria expansion, this mount can be bought from a vendor by the name of Uncle Big Pocket. He's located in the Kunlun Summit and will give you the reins of the mount for 120,000 gold. Both NPCs atop the mount are Grummels, with the Grummel on the player's right being Cousin Slowhands. This NPC is a repair vendor, but he only became a repair vendor in WoD, since in Mr. Pandaria he was actually a reforger. Additionally, Cousin Slowhands also sells many food and drink items from Mop. Mystic Birdhat is the NPC on the other side of the Yak and offers transmogging services. Mystic Birdhat is the only transmogrifier in the game who is not an ethereal. With the addition of the transmogrifier on the Grand Expedition Yak, this makes the mount a portable T-Mog machine that can be summoned anywhere a mount can. There is one alternative to this called the deployable attire rearranger. This item is made with the BFA engineering, but is also consumed on use and only lasts for a short period of time, so the mount is still far superior. Many people love transmogging in WoW, so the mount is quite popular, and is a common sight in any capital city or hub. Many more people use it than the Brutosaur, and many more players own this mount as well. Since so many people frequently use this mount, it makes sense for both the helpful duo of Mystic Birdhat and Cousin Slowhands to be at this list at number 6. At number 5, we have another fan-favorite character. Khadgar has a long and extensive story and lore about him in WoW, and he is the only major character to appear on this list. He deserves this for several reasons. Just to start, Khadgar has helped the player so far in at least 4 expansions, guiding them and always being there. In the Burning Crusade, he helps the player orient themselves in Shattrath and leads the assault against Kel'Thas, Illidan, and Sargeras. He returned in the Warlords of Draenor expansion, where he was a central figure throughout almost the entirety of the story. Khadgar returned in the Legion expansion, again as a central figure, and he himself even helped teleport Dalaran to the Broken Isles. Khadgar's next big appearance is in Dragonflight, after Kalecgos comes to ask for his help. Over the years, Khadgar has saved the players' lives numerous times, sent them to get legendary gear, and guided players through several of the most iconic raids in all of WoW. Khadgar can guide and teleport players through Hellfire Citadel, the Nighthole, the Tomb of Sargeras, and the Vault of the Incarnates. All of this, and he'll probably also be in future raids as well. There could be entire videos dedicated to solely covering Khadgar and his many deeds and history, but suffice to say that he is one of the most helpful NPCs that players will ever interact with in the entirety of WoW. And number 4 on this list, we have the Bronze Dragon Chromie. Chromie's real name is Chronormu, and she is one of the most important figures in the Bronze Dragonflight. Her visage is that of a female gnome, and her high-pitched voice is easily recognizable. While Chromie does have her own fair bit of lore, we're looking at how helpful she is to the player. Chromie helps players navigate the Wrath Dungeon, the Colin of Strathholm, as well as being a quest giver in the Zone of Dragonblight. Outside of some other minor appearances, as well as having a solo dungeon dedicated to her, her next big appearance came in the Shadowlands expansion with the Level Switch. A new system of leveling called Chromie Time was added to the game, and by talking to Chromie, players can choose when, where, and how they want to level. Chromie can be found in both Stormwind and Orgrimmar atop an hourglass near the embassy. Additionally, Chromies help players each year during WoW's anniversary in the Caverns of Time. Here she serves as the quest giver and helps players fight enemies from past expansions. Finally, she plays a pretty large part in the quest of the Zone of Thaldraszus and the Dragon Isles. All of this is not going into detail about her many interactions and experiences with the players, but Chromie is certainly one very helpful Bronze Dragon. When a player reaches the current level to start a new expansion while they're in Chromie Time, Chromie herself will conveniently teleport you to the capital city to start a new journey in the freshest content WoW has to offer. Because she is a fan favorite and time really is on her side, Chromie clocks at number 4 on this list of helpful NPCs. And at number 3, we have Zidormi, another Bronze Dragon. According to the short story Visage Day, she's close friends with Chromie and also a friend of Kalecgos. When she appears, her visage is that of a female human with brown hair. Most players will be familiar with her as the NPC players must talk to time travel to different phases in a zone. So far in-game, she has appeared a total of 10 times. Each time Zidormi appears, she has dialogue about that specific zone that she's in. Zidormi's first appearance was actually in Wrath of the Lich King, where she can be found in Dalaran in the Violet Citadel, where she's standing next to a portal that takes players to the Caverns of Time. Located in Tanaris, way at the bottom of Kalimdor, the Caverns of Time houses an important dungeon named the Colin of Strathholm. This dungeon was current content during Wrath, and the events that unfold are crucial to understanding the rise and fall of the Lich King. So, to help make travel from Dalaran to the Caverns of Time, Blizzard added Zidormi in her portal. However, with the new and updated portal rooms for both factions arrived in patch 8.1.5, Blizzard decided to also remove a ton of portals from the game for still unknown reasons. Since there were now portals to the Caverns of Time in both Stormwind and Orgrimmar, the portal to the Caverns of Time from Dalaran was also removed, seemingly because it was redundant. With no more portal, it made no sense for Zidormi to be there, so Zidormi was also removed in patch 8.1.5 from Northrend Dalaran. Zidormi's next appearance was in the lead-up to the Mr. Pandaria expansion. Since patch 5.04, Zidormi appears in Dustfall of Marsh to offer players the choice to return to the zone before Garrosh had Theramore mana-bombed to oblivion. Zidormi returned again in the World of the Draenor expansion, but this time in the Blasted Lands. Located in the very north of the zone, she can teleport players to the Cataclysm version of the zone and to the zone after the Iron Horde invaded in the lead-up to WoD. Zidormi was added to the Peak of Serenity in the Kunlun Summit during the Legion expansion. During the beginning of the Monk's Order Hall campaign, the Burning Legion attacks almost completely destroys the Peak of Serenity. Afterwards, Zidormi can be found offering players to return to how the area was before the invasion. Zidormi actually makes a second appearance in Legion, but this time in Silithus. Here she can be found in an inconvenient spot in the far northeast part of the zone. In Silithus, Zidormi can teleport players from the Cataclysm version of the zone to the zone as it appears after Sargeras got a little too stabby, while being captured during the finale of the Antorus raid. Of course, there is nothing wrong with this new version of Silithus, and definitely not a giant sword that was never fully addressed. Next, Zidormi makes a total of 5 appearances in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. First in Darkshore to teleport players before and after the Brand of Teldrassil. Second in the Tearsful Glades to show the before and after the Battle for Lordaeron. Zidormi teleports the players to another new version of Tearsful after the players completed the post-Shadowlands questline and earned the achievement Return to Lordaeron. Zidormi's 3rd appearance is in the Arathi Highlands to show the before and after the Battle for Stromgarde. Zidormi's 4th and 5th appearances are in Uldum and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. This can allow for the zones to become un-Inzothified throughout the Vale of Eternal Blossoms and is pretty much rebuilt in its new iteration after Garrosh destroyed it at the end of Mists of Pandaria. This is so far all for Zidormi's appearances, although she'll probably make a comeback into expansions as more old zones get updated or are changed substantially. While it can be argued that Zidormi is merely present in the game only for a player game mechanic, she's nevertheless one of the most important NPCs in all of WoW, in the fact that she can transfer players at different phases and that she is the only way to swap between all the content in the zones. Because so much gameplay simply depends on her, Zidormi ranks number 3 on this list. And number 2 on this list, we have the first NPC that can be summoned from a toy, and I'm talking about the wonderful Katy Stampwhistle, who is one of the biggest blessings in all of WoW. By simply blowing the toy Katy Stampwhistle, the player can summon a bright and lovely female gnome named Katy Stampwhistle. Katy was first added in Legion, and she can be found in Dalaran. She is officially the Postmaster's assistant and is such very busy dealing with all the mail. However, she will take 10 minutes out of her day to teleport to wherever the player uses her whistle at. Once summoned, the player can talk to her and access their mailbox. This essentially makes a toy and Katy a portable mailbox, meaning the player can check their mail or send a mail at any time at almost any place. To obtain the Katy Stampwhistle toy, players must first complete a long quest in the Broken Isles Dalaran, culminating in getting the achievement named the Total Package. The questline is too long to explain in detail, but the gist of it is you get to help Katy sort mail with several pitfalls and hiccups along the way. Katy Stampwhistle will only summon Katy for 10 minutes, and it has a cooldown of 3 hours. However, that cooldown is per character, making Katy Stampwhistle one of the most helpful and best quality of life features in the game. A similar toy was also added in the Dragonflight called the Ohana Perch, which also allows players to check their mail, but nothing can beat the original Katy. Her optimism and willingness to help is very evident, as she is by far one of the most helpful NPCs in all of WoW, so we're singing her off at 2nd place. And at number 1 on our list, we have a 4-way tie. Well, it's more of a tie between a team of 2 NPCs. Their names are Hakmud of Argus, Gnimo, Mojodishu, and Drix Blackwrench, and all these NPCs are associated with one thing, which is a mount called the Traveler's Tundra Mammoth. This mount was added in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion and is very useful in many ways. To obtain this mount, players must buy it from May Francis in Northrend Dalaran for 20,000 gold. Upon learning this mount, players will earn the achievement appropriately called Traveler's Tundra Mammoth. What makes this mount so useful is that when it's summoned, it comes complete with 2 traveling companions. For Alliance players, those 2 NPCs are Hakmud of Argus and Gnimo, the Mecha Gnome. For Horde players, those 2 NPCs are Mojodishu and Drix Blackwrench. Both Hakmud and Mojodishu are general trade vendors, and they sell food and drink items in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. In the Cataclysm expansion, they were also updated to sell thick hide packs, which are 14-slot bags. Hakmud of Argus is a male Draenei and actually does make an appearance on Argus in the subzone of Iridreth. Mojodishu is a female Darkspear troll who has yet to make an appearance in the game aside from the mount. Both NPCs have the same epithet of traveling trader. Both Gnimo and Drix are generic profession vendors, selling various items used in Wrath professions like thread, flax, and parchment. Gnimo is a male mecha gnome from Wrath that is completely made of metal. He bears the name of Adventurous Tinker. Drix Blackwrench is a goblin and presumably an engineer with a name like Blackwrench. Drix's sub-description says The Fixer. All NPCs have several lines they say when they mount or are dismounted. We can't list them all here, but most of them do not sound very excited to be left out wherever the player dismounts. My personal favorite dismount line is from Drix when he says, "Hey, yeah, I've always wanted to be stranded somewhere." Hakmud of Argus has even more lines because several new special lines were added in Legion when he got dismissed on Argus. So what makes the Traveler Tundra Mammoth so special? Well, it can be used anywhere in the world where a player can mount. This means at any time in the open world or in cities, as long as the player is not inside or on a non-mountable zone, they will have access to both a vendor and a repair vendor at any time. It's obvious to see how this is a great advantage since players can both sell items to free up backspace and repair their armor whenever and mostly wherever they please. This means, theoretically, players never have to return to an encampment or a city to repair or sell their items. Another great feature is that as long as the player is a member of the same faction as the other player, they are free to access and use the vendors without having to be in a group with the person who summoned the Traveler Tundra's Mammoth. To this date, the addition of this mount marks one of the biggest quality of life upgrades in the entire history of WoW. There are several iterations of this mount, which we've covered previously, but this mount is the OG one, and the NPCs on this mammoth deserve the number 1 spot on this list because of it. Alright, and that does it for this video, which is kind of a long one, and yes, I know there are a ton of NPCs on mounts, but that's because mounts are simply so accessible. In total, there were 4 mounts on this list, but hey, who's counting? The idea of this video came from a comment on one of the other videos, so if you want to hear your own ideas turned into a video, leave a comment below and maybe we can make a video about it. So, see you in the next